Hello everyone and welcome back. Your favorite sea panda here. I hope you're all doing well. Now, have you ever wondered where Alderon Games gets their selection of dinosaurs to add into Path of Titans? I bet you 5 clams, 5 whole schmuckums that you haven't. But anyway, I have, and I couldn't find anything about it. I couldn't find a list of where they get their stuff from, or what they decide to add, or how they even do that. I couldn't find it. But then I started to look through their selection of dinosaurs that they have in game. We have got everything from ceratopsians, tyrannosaurs, to Sarcosuchus, Megalania, Hatzegopteryx, all of that. We've got literally any type of dinosaur you can think of, except for one major one that I couldn't help but notice was missing. Now, before you go into the comments and spam, but, I'm gonna say sauropods, because we only have a Margosaurus in the vanilla game, and if I'm gonna be honest, it's not much of a sauropod. Coming around to about 5 tons in real life, it's no surprise it's not that big of a sauropod. And to me, it just doesn't give the sauropod class or sauropod family enough justice in a game like this. So this video, I kind of wanted to give a few examples of sauropods that I'd like. I'm going to be talking about special features they could have, and then I'm going to talk about special combat encounters they could have, and then I'm going to give a bit of a brief description on both of the sauropods I want to add. Now, I'm not talking about massive ones like Argentinosaurus, but I'm also thinking a lot bigger than a Margosaurus, like minimum 3 times its size, because this thing, as cool as some people think it is, I don't like it. A Marga is pretty boring. It's too small, and it doesn't add anything interesting. It's like a ceratopsian, except instead of headbutting, it spams tail, and that's about it. So, anyway, yes, let's get straight into this video. Alright, so to get into the juicy part of the video, I'm gonna first talk about special features. What could more sauropods, especially larger ones than a Marga, bring to the game that modded ones already haven't? Because this is coming from the point of if Alderon Games themselves added them, which means they get basically the freedom to do whatever they want with them, whereas modders are a bit restricted. So, anyway, yes, what special features do I think sauropods could bring if they were made by Alderon? Well, for one, new food sources. Imagine you're a giant sauropod and you're able to just walk up to a tree and eat off of it. Like, any of these trees, you could just reach up and eat off of them. That would be sick. I mean, theoretically, even a Marga could put its little feet on the trunk of a tree and reach some of the branches, but these sauropods, they would be able to just look up, or maybe even not even need to change their head direction and still be able to eat from them, which I think would just add so much to the game. It adds more character. It means there's more food for other herbivores, because these ones don't need to constantly take the nuts, flowers, and berry bushes from ceratopsians or something. And it would also just be a bit more. It'd add a lot to the game. Like I say, more food for other herbivores. Plus, carnivores would be able to wait by these trees, because it'd be like berry bushes. How there's certain bushes you can eat from, and then there's like decorative ones. It'd be like that, but with trees. So carnivores would be able to wait by one of these trees, and if they if they so wish to, they'd be able to ambush one of these sauropods by the tree, which I know, cinema. That would be so cool to have in this game, like a pack of Tyrannotines. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So yes, tall trees that sauropods can eat off. Now, coming with this, I'd also like to maybe suggest even falling leaves, like leaves that have fallen on the floor and are able to give a small amount of sustenance to stuff like Camptosaurus or Struthiomimus, just something small, even like baby ceratopsians, so they don't need to go and wait by a bush to get ambushed easily. I feel like that would add so much to the game. It's such a little change, but I feel like it would add so much. Now, next up, I also want to talk about a new food source again, but for Ramphorhynchus. Because as we all seen in the old documentaries for Welcome to Dinosaurs, little pterosaurs, I don't know if this is disproven or not, but little pterosaurs would maybe hop onto the side of a sauropod and pick the bugs off the skin. Which, I that would be so cool in game. It would give Ramphorhynchus a reason to chill with these bigger dinosaurs for protection and also to get a free food source. It wouldn't be good, but it'd be a decent enough food source. Now, I do want to just quickly mention I would make it so these sauropods are immune to the buffs Ramph gives, like or even the debuffs, like the faster food and thirst drain, and also some of like the damage buffs it can give. I'd want them to be immune to it because it's supposed to be just a little feeding thing. It's not supposed to be like insane combat scenario type stuff. But that's a few of the few features which I could be added. Now, it would only be on these two dinosaurs, these two sauropods, but I think if Alderaan ever did add this, they'd find a way to expand it. So, yeah. Anyway, on to combat experiences. All right, so combat experiences. Now, I'm gonna give a quick, brief explanation on what I actually mean by that, and I mean combat encounters. So, you all know that the majority of fights in this game is either a ankle biter trying to kill you, or you trying to kill it, it bites you, then runs away, or you trample it, and it dies, or you're fighting a mid tier and you get jumped by a huge pack, or you're fighting an apex and they just face tank you. That is basically Path of Titans down to the tip. That's as close as you can get to saying how this combat works. However, currently we have got one Carcharodontosaurus in the game. Well, no, we've got two in vanilla, but one of them doesn't really matter here because it's Concavenator. But the other one, Tyranititan, this change would give a lot more to it. Now, yes, I have recently been loving Tyranititan, so I'm a bit biased towards it, but with new sauropods, this would let Tyranititan have the ability to abuse its bleed a bit more. And what I mean by this is, you wouldn't need to bleed like a Tyrannosaurus out to even use the bleed, because currently that is like the only good thing that you can do with it. However, if these sauropods were added, Tyranitin would be incredibly effective. These things could maybe stand up to a Rex and be fine, but they would just absolutely be afraid of a Tyranitin. Like, that thing would be a monster because of how much bleed it does. Now, they could also give a new effect to the flesh tearing ability it has, such as either a visual one, where it makes, like, the sauropod buckle or limp. Like, let's say a Tyranitin bites the side of the sauropod's leg, and it rips out a huge chunk. That would probably cause a lot of bleeding, for one. But it also caused the sauropod to maybe buckle on that leg or limp a little bit, which I don't know how hard that would be to code for each individual leg, but I think that would be pretty cool. Even if it wasn't done on each individual leg, I still think that would be pretty sick to have. But that's pretty much all I can say with Tyranitin, because I don't know. I feel like it would just be such a good counter towards these sauropods, and it would give it much more use than just killing Rexes or Spinos, which currently that's all it's used for. Okay, so on to what is probably one of the biggest parts of this video, is actually discussing one of the two sauropods. I'm going to be discussing one of them with an ability that I think it could have, and then describing it a little bit, and then I'll do the other one after that. So, without, any more wait, I want to introduce you to Rabachiosaurus, which I think would be, I don't know, such a cool thing to have in Path of Titans. And considering they seem to have done a trend of not adding popular things, except then they went back on that, this could kind of wean it back into adding unpopular dinosaurs. So anyway, a lot of you probably don't know what Rabachiosaurus is. So I will start off with it's similar to Amaga in how its proportions are, except for its legs and its back. So it has longer legs similar to a Camarasaurus, and its back has this like meaty, spikish hump. I don't really know how to describe it other than that. And it looks a little bit similar to the Walking with Dinosaurs Diplodocus in its back shape. And really, I kind of want this thing to have abilities that step away from the normal stomps or kicks that sauropods normally have in these type of games, because really that is all they do. And I wanted to go and abuse this thing's size. It comes in at around 12 tons, so that's already 3 times heavier than an Ameosaurus in the game, which, that's not too bad. It's heavy. It's like, this thing weighs a lot. It's a dense boy. It's not much longer than a Maga, but it's taller and a lot fatter. So I wanted this thing to be more of a trampler. So I gave it an ability which, well, not gave it, but I want to suggest an ability which would maybe be like a fast trot. So it would be slower than its sprint, but quicker than normal trotting. It wouldn't have AoE or anything, so it's not broken like that. I don't want to make these creatures broken. But it would basically have a fast trotting stampede ability, and it would be slightly quicker than Tyranitar with the ability. So Tyranitar trots at 475, which is already pretty quick. However, this ability would make the Rabachiosaurus trot at 500, so only 25 quicker, which, I'd say that's reasonable, considering it'd use a big chunk of its stamina, and this thing has got long legs. Now, onto the stats of the ability. I'd like it to have a pretty good cooldown, like 15 to 20 second cooldown. It would do 100 damage to anything that it touches. This also does take in account of headshots and tail damage. So if it hits your tail, it will do less. Hits your head, it will do more. It's not like an armor pierce. But basically, it would do 100 damage to anything it hits. Combat weight does also change that. But anyway, 100 damage, and it would be a 2-second duration between the damage ticks. So you know how like Kawakia's barrel roll, I think, has damage ticks so it can hit multiple times? It'll be like that, except it'll be 2 full seconds between each damage tick. So it'll be like 100 damage. If it's still on you, another 100 damage 2 seconds later, which I think is pretty balanced, considering this thing's size. Now, you can always just run away from this ability, but let's say you're low on stamina and this thing manages to catch up. It's not going to be a good time for you, unless you just turn out the way. This ability would also cancel when you sprint. I don't have a name for the ability, so could someone please leave a comment down below about that? But anyway, onto the generic stats I think I'd give it. So I'd give it 2,000 health, more than a T-Rex, more than Spinosaurus, because this thing's a pretty hefty sauropod. And I'd give it 6,500 combat weight, 1,000 more than Rex, because this thing weighs quite a bit more. And then onto the speeds, because obviously a lot of people have issues with sauropods maybe being too quick. I'd make this thing walk at 200, trot at 400, so slower than Tyranitar, but still pretty good, like a good trot speed because of how long its legs are. However, it would only have 575 sprint, which if you want to know how slow that is, T-Rex sprints at 800. It's also slower than DB Deinosuchus, so there you go. It's incredibly slow, and it would only be able to sprint for about 30 seconds before having no stamina left, so its stamina drain would be pretty high. But yeah, that's Rabachiosaurus. That's the first one I wanted to go over. Please could you leave a comment down below about other abilities you'd like to give this thing, and also feedback on the ability that I thought for myself, as well as stats. Because I'm really curious on what you guys can come up with. I got some incredibly talented smart viewers, so hopefully you guys come up with something pretty cool. So the next one is more of a different sauropod. It's part of the Brachiosaurid family, I believe, and it's Ameosaurus. It's O-M-E-I and then Saurus. I'll probably put it up on screen so you can see it. And it's a bit larger than the latter. So it's a bit larger than the sauropod I just spoke about before. And it comes at around 20 tons. Now, before you say anything, that's not that big. If you look at something like Argentinosaurus, 80 to 100 tons, this thing is not that big compared to that. So when I said at the start, I don't want giant sauropods, I just want bigger ones, this is kind of what I meant. So 20 tons, a lot heavier than a T-Rex. It would be the biggest animal on vanilla by far, which I think the game could have. So, anyway, back onto more of its description. So, Ameosaurus would be able to feed off of the new edible trees that would be added, and it would be more of an imposing challenge. So, it'd be like a small brachiosaur, and it would basically anything, not just carnivores, just anything in the vicinity of it within like 50-meter radius that can see it. I would like to have a new debuff applied to them called Discouraged. Now, what Discouraged would do is any animal nearby it moves 5% faster, but they also do 5% less damage and bleed. So what that kind of symbolizes is how, like, you know, when you're afraid of something, you don't want to attack it, you want to kind of run away. Fight or flight, except just flight, no fight. Basically, it kind of makes you want to do that. It would give you speed so you can get away, but you do less damage in case you want to go and attack it. This would also mean that it gets 10%. It takes 10% less damage from anything attacking it. However, because it's, this is an ability based on it being, kind of discouraging to look at because of how big and tall it is, this ability would stop working when a Myasaurus hits 35% health, to imply that carnivores and other things are no longer afraid by it, because it would then it would then start showing body scars at around about 35%, So when it shows scars, that debuff would go away. It doesn't affect it, so it doesn't take 10% less damage. You don't get 5% more speed, but you also don't get 5% less bleed and damage. So, that completely just disappears. And, for attacks, I kind of wanted this thing to have a bit of a weird stomp attack. I know I wanted to go away from stomps, but this would be more of a very unique, different one. So, for the attack, I wanted a Myasaurus to be able to rear up on its back legs for about 4 to 5 seconds. It won't be able to walk, it'll only be able to turn in place while doing this. But the animation for going up would be pretty quick, because if it was really slow, you could just run away and it'd be useless. So it should be pretty quick going up, and then you can like a charge bite, you can either hold it for the full time, or you can manually slam it down, which would be pretty cool. Obviously, you will have to wait for it to get up properly, so you can't just spam up, down, because that would be broken and it would be stupid and annoying. So anyway, yes, this thing can't walk during this ability. It can turn, but not very quickly. And basically, it would rear up and come down with like a crushing attack. So if it lands on anything, there's no AoE. It's not an AoE stomp. It'd just be like a rear up and then a slam down. And anything that it crushes would instantly get 50% fracture, 100 damage dealt to them, and get a new effect called Winded, causing their stamina to drain 25% faster for 20 seconds. So it's like it's just stepped on you. It's like when you get punched in the stomach and you can't breathe properly for like, I don't know, a couple seconds. It's that type of thing. But except a little bit longer because it's a giant sauropod stomping on you. Anyway, for its stats, because this thing's bigger and I want it to be more of an imposing threat, I'd like to give it 2,300 health, which is 1,000 more than a Spinosaurus. 6,750 combat weight, so it weighs a little bit more, has a bit more health. And when it comes to speed, I'd want this thing to have 200 walk, 375 trot speed, and 525 sprint speed. So it's slower than the other sauropod I mentioned. It's slower than it. And, that's about it for its stats. I want it to be slow but incredibly durable, because it would just be something cool to have. And it wouldn't be broken. Like, it's not chasing down anything anytime soon. It's far too slow for that. Anyway, I know this one was shorter, but I really do hope you enjoyed the Ameosaurus. Now, I do have a little bonus for you guys at the end, and it's more just clarification. So, these sauropods, they'd only be concepts so far, which I hope Alderon would maybe add to the game one day. Hopefully. If they do add sauropods, I'd like them to look at this video and maybe add them. Unless you guys hate them, then yeah, let's not bother. But hopefully everyone likes it, because I've spent a bit of time on these, and I'm really excited to present them. But anyway, I'd also like to add that both of these would be incredibly weak to bleed, so they'd have the lowest bleed resistance in the entire game. Like, Tyranitartan's regular bite would do probably, I don't know, a minute of bleed to them every time you bite, and they could have a total of like 7 minutes of bleed. So yeah, they take a lot of bleed, like a lot of bleed, just so they're balanced to fight. And they would also both be able to be pounced on by a Ramphorhynchus, which could eat insects off them. So yeah, that basically wraps up this video. So yes, I want to thank you all if you made it to the end. I hope you enjoyed. It means a lot to me if you did stay here. Obviously, these are my ideas, so please be respectful in the comments. You know, you're allowed to say you disagree or agree, whatever, but don't just outright go and throw hate because, yeah, I spent a lot of time on this. And anyway, yes. So, thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. If you did, could you please make sure to like, share, subscribe? It helps me out an absolute ton. We're so close to 2,000 subscribers, which is just astonishing. Anyway, I hope you all take care. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye, everyone. Take care.